guys, it's your boy Luke here for our round 3 prize picks targets for this week's Valero Texas Open. For round 2, it wasn't our best. We got a little bit unfortunate with Hideki withdrawing. I told you guys about the back issues. We knew it was going to be an issue and ended up being too big of an issue. Through 9 holes, he only had 2 birdies, and that was on by far the easier of the 2 nines. And he ended up withdrawing, which makes that a push for us, not a hit or a miss, which actually made our card end up not hitting today, because if we ended up having those 3 props come through, Hideki was well on track to hitting the under. We also ended up hitting 2 of our other props, would have at least came through with a little bit of money, but ended up losing on a few of our props, most notably lost on the Jason Day over greens in regulation. He ended up hitting 13 on the day. We of course had the under there, and the other prop I didn't hit on was also a birdie prop. That was for Ian Poulter, 3.5 birdies or better. He had 2 through his first 8 holes and completely sold on the back 9. Was not his usual self with the putter. In fact, lost over a stroke putting on his final 9 holes. He had more than enough opportunities for us to get to that 4 number, but we'll have to take our loss for today and move on here for round 3. But I'm really looking forward to round 3 here, because a lot of the big name players did not end up making the cut. You had guys like Rory McIlroy, Bryson DeChambeau, Jason Day all missed the cut, Ricky Fowler as well. And as a result, a lot of the names on the prize picks board aren't household names. They're guys that only people that are doing research week in and week out, that are really in tune with the PGA Tour, are going to know about. And of course, for the prize picks market, that means that we have a market ripe for the taking. Just a lot of props that, in my opinion, are vastly off from where they should be. So let's go ahead and hop right into the preview here for what I have here for round 3. All right, on the screen you can see the data golf page for the Valero Texas Open, and let's go ahead and focus on what we saw for round 2 to go ahead and start off this preview. You can see the scoring conditions were kind of dependent on when you teed off. In the morning, played very similar to what we saw on Thursday, close to right around a half a stroke under par. For Friday, it was 0.39 shots under par, but in the afternoon, when the wind really started to kick up, right around 11:30 a.m., you had those 20 to 30 mile an hour winds come through. You saw it play over par. In fact, close to half a stroke over par. That's what I expected yesterday. The wind did come in a little bit later than what the forecast showed, so that's why some of the scores in the morning were a little bit better than what we were expecting yesterday. But this over par average in the afternoon is exactly what you're going to get when the conditions aren't all that well. But the one thing for tomorrow is that's not going to be the case. Here for Saturday, this is the wind finder report for San Antonio Airport, which yesterday I thought was a little bit further than the course than it actually is. It's actually only 15 minutes away from TPC San Antonio. So this wind finder report should be extremely accurate. And you can see the wind isn't a factor. In the morning, you're going to have a little bit of gusts super early towards 8 or 9 a.m. Now, the sustained winds are only in the 7 to 3 mile an hour range, so I wouldn't expect that to cause all that much of an issue. But from right around 10 a.m. the whole way to, let's say, 2 p.m. at the earliest, going to have a window of perfect weather. I mean, you can see 3 miles an hour sustained wind, 0 mile an hour sustained winds, 2 miles an hour sustained winds from 12 to 1. So you're going to see a ton of guys go low that are teeing off towards the morning. Now, in the afternoon, the wind does get a little bit more significant. It gets towards the 6 to 7 mile an hour sustained range, and then towards the end of the day, the 8 to 9 mile an hour sustained range. Now, the gusts aren't all that much higher, so the wind isn't going to be that much of a factor. So in terms of scoring conditions, I would expect them to be a lot closer to what we saw on Thursday rather than what we saw on Friday. So this 16/100ths of a shot under par average, probably closer to what we're going to see, but especially considering that a lot of the worst players, a lot of the people that were amateurs, maybe guys in the worst form in the field, were cut, right? It's after Friday, we're dealing with Saturday and Sunday, which means that all of the players that made it to the weekend are at the very least playing some decent golf. So inherently the scoring average is going to be lower than what we saw for Thursday and Friday, and I would expect it to be right around a third of a stroke under par. So now with all of that in mind, let's go ahead and hop into the prize picks board for this weekend. And for Saturday, there's a few props that I really like. First and foremost, this Gary Woodland fairways hit prop is by far my favorite prop on this channel that we've had over the last month. I mean, this is just a disrespectful line. To say that Gary Woodland is only going to hit 6 fairways at a course with 14 fairways on it is disrespectful. This is somebody who, even though he isn't the most accurate driver of the golf ball, is one of the best players in the world, particularly that's left in this field. I mean, outside of Jordan Spieth, Corey Connors, and then maybe guys like McNeely and Kirk, He's the best player in this field. And if you take a look at the winning odds in terms of a lot of the sports books, he is the favorite at this point. The only other guy that's in any type of contention with him for the favorite is going to be Ryan Palmer, who's in first place at this point. But in terms of skill set, in terms of recent form, Gary Woodland is checking all of the boxes for us. So for him to hit the over here, all he has to do is hit 50% of his fairways tomorrow. The average in terms of fairways hit at this golf course is 61.4%. So as long as he hits within 10% of the average at this field, he'll end up hitting the over here. And of course, Gary Woodland is not an average player. Like I said, one of the best players in the field, if not the best player remaining of the guys that ended up making the cut. So at 6.5 fairways hit, I understand that he's not the most accurate driver of the golf ball, but to hit half your fairways, you don't have to be the most accurate driver of the golf ball. In fact, there's a lot of amateurs out there that do that from round to round. So I love that number there at 6.5. All right, and now moving on to the greens in regulation props. The first prop I have my eyes on is going to be Henrik Stenson at 11 greens in regulation. He's not the best approach player in the world, but over the last 24 measured rounds, one of the worst stretches in his entire career, he is still gaining to the field with his approach play. And at this golf course, you're hitting right around 64.8% of your greens in regulation on average, which means your average player is going to hit right around 11 greens. And Henrik Stenson is well better than an average iron player. I mean, he was the number one player in the world at one point, and even though he hasn't had his best stuff of late, he is still well above average with this field. So considering the fact that he's playing in the morning, he's only 3 under par, so going to be teeing off in one of the best tee times of the entire day, right around 10:30, 11 a.m. He's also one of the better approach players teeing off earlier on in the day. One of the guys that I'm extremely confident in taking here. If we take a look at the field average, they're hitting right around 62% of greens in regulation this week, which means your average player is going to hit right around 10.9 fairways on the round. For somebody like Henrik Stenson that is gaining to the field, I am comfortable projecting him for well over 12 fairways. In fact, in terms of my metrics, I have him projected for 12.8 fairways, making him one of the better props on the board. Now, not quite as good of a prop as what we have with Gary Woodland, who I have him projected for 9.5 fairways, which is almost a 40% edge there with that prop. You're looking at more closer to a 15 to 20% edge here at the very most, which is still very significant for what we have here on Prize Picks. And also taking a look at Tony Finau, who is at 11.5 greens in regulation. Very similar story to Henrik Stenson. Also not playing his best golf, somebody who hasn't had very many flashy finishes of late. But Tony Finau is gaining 0.499 shots gained approach to the field over his last 24 measured rounds, which is among the best in the field. In fact, of the guys that ended up making the cut, he is number 2 in the field in shots gained approach. So to consider that the average player is going to hit somewhere in the range of 10.5, 11 fairways for this round tomorrow. Tony Finau, a well above average player. I have him projected for 13.2 fairways. So also somebody much like a Henrik Stenson that I have a comfortable over on in this scenario. And Tony Finau, through his first 2 rounds, has hit the over. He's been very consistent with that approach play. Has been sticking it to 15 feet on pretty much every single hole. The real issue's been the putter. The only reason he's 3 under par, hasn't asserted himself towards the top of this leaderboard, has been with the flat stick. And of course, when we're targeting a prop on a single stat like greens in regulation, the putting is completely irrelevant to us. You can go out there tomorrow, continue to struggle on those greens, but also continue to hit those greens in regulation and hit our prop for us. So definitely like Henrik Stenson and Tony Finau there, both very comfortable when it comes to the greens in regulation. And now finally, we're going to wrap up with our 2 fades, which are both going to be for birdies or better. And quite frankly, I'm surprised that they have Keegan Bradley and Kevin Chappell at 4.5 birdies. I know the conditions are a little bit easier here for Saturday. We don't have the wind that we had in the forecast there for Friday, but even on Thursday, this place wasn't super easy. It still just played 0.16 shots under par like we showed before. So to assume that guys like Keegan Bradley, Kevin Chappell, which are far from some of the best players in the world, get to 5 or 6 birdies is asking a lot. I have them making around 3.5, 3.6 birdies per round, respectively. 3.6 for Keegan Bradley, 3.5 for Kevin Chappell, making them, again, some of the better props on the board. You're looking at right around a 20 to 22% edge on both of these props, respectively. And both of them also deal with issues with the putter. I mean, Keegan Bradley, one of the worst putters on the PGA Tour. If you take a look at his numbers on POA Anua specifically, the grass type that we have for this course this week, he is losing over a stroke and a half per round, one of the worst numbers in the field. Kevin Chappell also not very good with the flat stick. And yesterday we had guys, again, consider, we did have a lot more severe weather, so a lot of the props were different. The highest guys on the board, like Rory McIlroy, people like Jordan Spieth, were priced at 4.5 birdies. Not guys like Keegan Bradley or Kevin Chappell. I mean, they should realistically have been priced at like 3.5 birdies for yesterday's round. And that difference between the weather is not enough to make them go up a whole 1.5 birdies. So I'll be taking the under of both of these players. Like I said, almost a whole birdie and a half difference between what they have here on Prize Picks and then my projections, also making them among my favorite picks on the board. Now, this is a 5-leg parlay. Of course, you have to do a flex play if you pick 5 plays, but I like these picks so much that I'm going to be playing 3 additional cards with 4 of these picks in a power pay. I just absolutely love them here. I think maybe one of them ends up not hitting due to some fluke aspect there, but the power plays I'm extremely confident in. I just is the best I've felt about a card in quite some time. You can see we're getting 12.5x value out of this flex play here, but with a lot of the power plays that I'm running, I'm going to be running a lot that are 2 overs and 2 unders so that we can get the full value there. Might be able to hit for 12.5x on one of those as well. So just to give you an idea what that would look like. Maybe you don't like this Tony Finau prop as much because it has the hook there at 11.5. Go ahead, just make it 2 overs, 2 unders. Go over here to the power play and got yourselves another 12.5x parlay. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to have a lot of cards that look like this. I'll have one that's Henrik Stenson swapped out for Tony Finau. I'll be running the same type of thing. I'm also going to have one where I'm running both greens and regulation props, right? So I'm going to be running Henrik Stenson and Tony Finau greens and regulation in a prop, taking out the Gary Woodland fairways prop and running with those type of cards for tomorrow. That is all I've got for the Prize Picks targets. Before you go on and get out of here, go ahead and let me know down in the comments what your favorite prop on the board is, whether it was something that I mentioned or completely off my radar. Would love to hear from you guys down below, so make sure you go ahead and comment that. Also going to have you guys covered for round 4 at this tournament. Going to have Prize Picks picks dropping tomorrow night, so make sure to look forward to that sometime around 8:30 or 9 p.m. Also, gonna have you guys covered for the Masters, so if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure you guys go ahead and do so you don't miss any of that to come. Make sure you smash the like button as well if you haven't already. Good luck with all of your props here for round 3, and let's get this cash.